Charlie today at allphly.com put out a little article that it was free, right?
No, behind the paywall.
Behind the paywall.
Gotta pay to get those reports.
Now I'm signed in, and I never know what's free and what isn't. I used to always.
No, this is for diehards only.
Well, diehards. If you're not a diehard, you're missing out. Sign up at allphly.com. I mean, just for Charlie, it's worth it. And look at all these. Look at all the benefits of becoming a diehard. You know, the premium content, Charlie, and so many other great beat writers here at PHLY. The Discord, which is lively, to say the least. Discount on merch. You get a free shirt. All sorts of stuff.
Want that Mad Russian shirt.
Yeah, got to get that Mad Russian shirt and get it cheap while you still can.
Will we have to adjust the shirt if he does come over and remove the soon in the corner?
I've been talking to our merch guy about. I have a couple different ideas, and the simplest one is like removing the soon or putting something else in there, like he's here or something like that. But yeah, we got to do something like that.
Okay.
But let's start it. So tomorrow, you're going to be at the media availability for Jonesy and Hilferty, and without a doubt, I mean, it's the first question, right?
Very well could be. It's at least like It's the thing.
It's the biggest question.
It's the biggest question facing the organization is, are you going to get Mitchkov? They're not going to say anything. But in this article, obviously, I do talk about what I've heard about Mitchkov. And basically what I've heard is that they're being very careful still. But don't take these last couple weeks of relative silence as a sign that this isn't necessarily going to happen. That the read I get from talking to people in and around the Flyers and then also around the league is that there's optimism that he could get out of this contract. Now, obviously, nobody wants to, start crowing about it because you don't want to step on the wrong foot, piss off the wrong person, whatever. But I get the sense that the Flyers are feeling like it's still a very legitimate possibility. So don't think that the fact that we haven't heard anything yet means that it's lost momentum.
That's like that. To me, the silence it's more of a good sign than a bad sign. Like hearing, I can't remember the name of the player, but whoever the big prospect in Carolina was, when they came out and were like, yeah, we think we're getting him. And then suddenly,
Nikishin, the defenseman. Yeah.
Suddenly it's like all sorts of management over in Russia being like, nah, I don't think you are. Actually, you can't have him now. Like the fact that hasn't happened, and we were told initially when the very first report was, we'll know by the end of June. Like the fact that there hasn't been it ain't happening sort of thing. Like it fills me at least with optimism. That's how I'm choosing to go forward right now.
I guess the way I position it in the article is that when I talk to people around the Flyers, I do not get the sense that their optimism has been quashed.
Okay.
They are still hopeful that this will play out in their favor. We will see what happens. It's certainly not a lock by any means, but I don't get the sense that they're like, well, it's probably not going to happen. Like, well, we got to plan for our cap situation if Mitchkov's here.
And that, given the fact that they're going to have to plan for that cap situation, because you see how the ELC works, and you go, oh, cool. We're going to have Mitchkov at 975, 925, whatever it is. Maybe not. I mean, that's the initial cap.
Yeah,
going into the season, that's the number.
Yes.
But then you look at the Will Smith contract and a lot of guys like this, and you go, oh, bonuses, right. It could end up being like a $3+ million cap hit if he were to achieve some probably pretty achievable bonuses. And considering he's going to have to buy himself out of the contract, we think, in Russia, you're going to want to have a little bit of a make-good situation, kind of the way we believe happened with Fedotov.
Exactly.
Now, that's just straight up. He was a UFA, so it's just straight up in his cap hit.
Yeah.
Like, here's more like 3.6, really, for this guy? That might be the situation with Mitchkov, sort of?
I think so. I would expect if and when he signs his ELC, it's going to have a lot of bonuses. As you note, the cap hit at the start of the season will still be, 925, 950, whatever. But the Flyers will have to account for the fact that he's going to have a lot of bonuses and a lot of very achievable bonuses. And unless they want a massive bonus overage for the following season, they probably shouldn't necessarily start the year completely slammed up against the cap.
And that's like when we say achievable bonuses, I don't know what they would be. But what was the Bergeron one a couple years ago? It was like 10 games.
Oh, was it?
Like,
yeah.
And it was,
they're like, we know we're going to have to pay.
Like 10 games, like doubled. It was like 2.5 to 5. Like it doubled his cap.
Basically just to help their cap situation.
Yeah, just so they had the initial cap situation there. And that kind of gets to the, I said a couple of, whenever it was, when the rumors, when we first started talking about them, if the Flyers are to get Mitchkov, I don't think it means you need to go all in, because it's like, this is a 19-year-old kid. What are you going to, we're going to win with him as our best player? Unlikely.
Probably not.
But I did say I want to attempt to acquire a player of equal talent to play alongside of him. I think that will aid in his development, take some of the weight off of his shoulders. He'll be able to produce right away, all that stuff. Might not be the case. Might not be what they're looking to do. Is that maybe because of the cap situation?
I don't get the sense that them getting Mitchkov, if they were to get him this summer, that it would have Danny go, all right, full speed ahead. I do not get the sense that the Flyers are preparing for the possibility of, hitting the turbo button on this thing if they get Mitchkov. I think that the offseason is going to, I'm not saying they won't make a trade, a big trade. They could. They certainly could. I think they're certainly looking around on hockey trades. But I don't think that getting Mitchkov changes their approach to the offseason. I think they are going to approach this offseason the same way, whether they get him or whether they don't.
All right. That's fair. I know I threw out the name like Mitch Marner, things like that. Obviously, the Pedersen thing can't happen now. He resigned. Right. I was just hoping for
you got guys like Zegras' names out there, obviously,
and that's maybe just a potential hockey trade more so than. But we'll see. We'll see how that works out. Listen, if the only high-end talent they bring in this offseason is Matvei Michkov, I'm not going to be sad.
Yeah,
fair. That's a pretty good player right there, and one we've been looking forward to. You say you keep hearing Ottawa as a team the Flyers have talked to a lot. This goes back to the deadline.
It does go back to the deadline.
We heard Chychrun's name. Yeah. Do you think that would be the guy, or what are they discussing with Ottawa, do you think?
What I'll say with Ottawa is that, obviously you hear things around the league. I've heard Ottawa be brought up to me as a potential trade partner for the Flyers from a lot of different people. And usually when you're hearing it from one source, you're like, okay, maybe. When you're hearing it from 3 or 4, I'm like, I heard the Flyers talking to Ottawa about this player. And then you hear from another person, heard the Flyers talking to Ottawa about this guy. You're like, wonder if it just seems like there's smoke there. I believe it was reported at the beginning of the season. I think Anthony Sanfilippo reported it, that the Flyers were interested in Shane Pinto. I've heard his name come up. He's an RFA again this summer because he only signed the 1-year deal. I've heard that those two sides, as in Ottawa and Pinto, have very different views of his talent level, and maybe that opens the door for a trade. I think the Flyers would potentially be interested there. But it does make some sense because they do have a lot of defensemen. They have some forwards I think they'd be willing to move. And, there are guys on the Flyers that I think they could be interested in. I've theorized Scott Lawton as a guy because they're one of those Buffalo-ish teams where they've got the talent. Now they think maybe they need some glue guys that can be locker room guys and get them pointed in the right direction from a culture standpoint. Lawton's the kind of guy who I think could intrigue an Ottawa. I know Ottawa's had their eye on Lawton for a while because of the DJ Smith connection. DJ Smith was Ottawa's coach. Yeah. He also was Lawton's coach in juniors, and Lawton loves DJ. DJ loved Lawton. DJ obviously is not the coach there anymore. So I kind of thought that ship maybe has sailed. I heard around the deadline that it hadn't, that Ottawa still really likes him even though DJ Smith is no longer the head coach. I'm not saying Lawton's going to get moved this summer. In fact, probably, if I had to wager, I would wager he sticks around. But he's a guy that I'm sure Ottawa probably has asked about, and maybe there's something there.
I feel like trading Lawton is just a really important step for this team. I don't think... The more time that passes, and listen, it's not even officially the offseason yet. These are still 2023, 24 moves that happen for the teams that have made trades. It's just I feel like we need to turn the page. That's just a major step there.
It's fair.
The Cam Atkinson buyout, it is gonna happen.
I mean, let me put it this way: the people I've talked to with the Flyers are not saying they're not saying we're going to buy out Cam. What I will say is that when you talk to people around the league, the assumption is the Flyers are going to buy out Cam Atkinson. Now, that could be wrong, but people well connected in the league think that Atkinson is getting bought out. And the Flyers have not ruled it out. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like when I talk to people with the organization, they're like, nah, Cam's sticking around. It's like, well, everything's on the table. So
it's very interesting to me. Like, how do you feel about extending the cap hit another year versus just kind of eating it? With Cam Atkinson, it's a different conversation. We'll talk about Cal Peterson. But, like, this is kind of as much about opening the roster spot and opening up some cap space as it is, we respect Cam and want to give him a chance elsewhere.
I think that is, if he gets bought out, that will be a big part of it. Now, part of it, too, is just opening up more cap space. They don't want to go into LTIR. They know they might have to, but they'd rather not. Buying out Atkinson would open up significantly more space than obviously just keeping him or whatever. They're not going to send him down to the minors because I think they have too much respect for him. But I do think that Look, Cam Atkinson made it very clear in exit interviews, and he still very much believes this. He thinks he still has gas left in the tank. He thinks that last year he can bounce back from and show that he is still a good NHL player. And that's fair. I don't know if I agree with him, but he's a proud NHL player who's a really good player for a long time. I get why he wants to prove that he's not the guy from the second half who didn't score in like 20-something games and ended up a healthy scratch / fourth liner for the final 3 months of the season. I get it. I don't think he's going to get that opportunity in Philly, especially if Mitchkov comes over. But even if Mitchkov doesn't come over, I mean, Bobby Brink's going to be on this team. And he's going to be on this team all year, and they're going to want him to play in the top 9, if not top 6. They already have too many right wingers. Then you add Mitchkov potentially to the mix. I just don't know where Atkinson gets the opportunity unless he absolutely kills it in camp and just like gets off to a hot start and it's like, well, we got to keep playing him. I think the Flyers might look at it as, let's just buy him out. We can't guarantee Cam Atkinson will play 82 games for us or even 70 games for us. But let's buy him out. He really wants this shot. Hopefully he catches on somewhere else with a team that will give him the opportunity to prove that he's not cooked, and it ends up helping out both sides. So I think that absolutely will play a part in it because I do think there's a lot of mutual respect there for Cam, the person, and Cam, the player. And while it's certainly not just them, it certainly would not just be them doing him a solid because he would be getting less money than he would if they kept him. Obviously, Cam Atkinson's preference would be the Flyers keep me, pay me my full salary, and play me 82 games, and then I can show everybody I'm still good. I just don't think the Flyers are going to have the ability to give him that guarantee, so maybe it's better to clear up some cap space and give him a shot elsewhere.
And Cam turns 35. Oh, he turns 35 tomorrow, actually. He has made a significant amount of money. If I'm him, yeah, I would obviously want the full boat of the contract I signed.
Sure.
But with an opportunity to go elsewhere, like, I would want to either, one, go to Columbus, where I feel like is my home anyway, or two, go chase down a cup, because I spent my whole goddamn career in Columbus and rebuilding Philly. Like, I would like a chance to play in some really meaningful games at 35 years of age before I have to hang them up. Yeah. It's not going to be here. And if I had to bet, I'd be like, yeah, Cam's cooked. 8 goals in the first 15 games this year. He had that quick spurt in the middle of the season.
Yeah,
where,
after the initial scratch.
Yeah, January 13th to the 23rd, where he had 2, 3, 4, 5 goals in like 7 games. He might have something left as at least a bottom of the lineup guy / locker room leader. Maybe he doesn't play every day, but he's on a good team. If he gets bought out, I think there will be some sort of market for Cam Atkinson.
I would think someone would give him a cheap 1-year deal. I would think.
Like, maybe to be, let's cross our fingers, he can be, obviously he was never as good as Matt Duchene, but maybe he can be that guy for a team.
I think he would get signed. I do not think that, Like, if the Flyers buy him out, I don't think that his career is over. I think he would catch on somewhere. At the very least, he would get a PTO. At the very least.
Okay, a PTO, that's a possibility.
But I think he would get signed by somebody for cheap.
All right, where do you want to go next with the things you're hearing? Because I don't want to give away your whole article here. There's a lot of really good stuff. If you want to read all of it, allphly.com, become a diehard, boom, problem solved. You can read the entire thing. Where do you want to go? Because I want to talk about Drysdale.
Okay,
That's where I want to go.
talk about Drysdale.
So he has had the surgery.
Yes.
And
it was still uncertain at Egg's interviews if he was definitely going to have the surgery. I can confirm he did have surgery.
I remember a couple of weeks ago, you're like, I'm not sure if he had it. I got to call around.
I need to do some digging on this.
And he's had the surgery, and I am always weary of the core muscle / what used to be referred to as sports hernia.
So are a lot of Flyers fans.
And listen, we did a lot of digging on what sports hernias are around the time of drafting Nolan Patrick.
Right.
When we found out like the number one dude for sports hernias / core muscle is like in the Navy Yard at the time. Yeah. So it was, we're the team that can fix him because we know the guy, and then Giroux and Gostisbehere both have that surgery. And what I learned about those injuries is when it gets down, it's basically just a tear. And when it gets into your hip, that's when it goes from being like, this is a quick fix to it's going to be a little while. This seems as if it didn't get that bad.
I've been told that it was not an especially invasive surgery, and that not only do the Flyers believe he will be ready for camp, they also think that he could be 100% like soon. That this isn't really even going to impact his offseason that much. Now, I guess we'll see. We'll see how it plays out when we talk to Drysdale in camp in September. We'll get an idea of how the recovery process really went and what happened. But it doesn't seem like this was as bad as I think a lot of fans were worried it was.
It's very encouraging, and I'm going to take that at face value. I don't think you made that up.
Yeah.
I assume that you actually did talk to some sources here. It's just like the reporting of injuries and the training staff as a whole is the part of this organization that still needs to win my trust back.
That's fair.
Like Rasmus Ristolainen just disappeared onto Ellis Island. This stuff is still happening. Yeah. Now, listen, it's hockey. Jacob Trouba just played an entire playoff with a broken ankle, and we didn't know about it until now. It's like he missed some time. Why? Oh, I broke an ankle. Like a chunk of his ankle just fucking fell out.
Yeah, I read that. Wild.
And we didn't hear anything about it until today.
Yeah.
It's hockey. It's not just a Flyers issue, but we are still having that issue. Maybe it's a holdover from the previous regime and it's unfair to the group that's in charge now. But I'm sorry, man. I've been here before you and I'll be here after you. And it's all one thing in my mind. It's the Flyers logo and I don't trust you. We'll see.
Fair.
I'm holding out hope, though, because of the research I did on these fucking injuries.
No, and also, and I know that this was a long time ago, but when Giroux and Gostisbehere had those surgeries, Flyers fans were told he'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah, I'll do the surgery in the offseason. He'll be good to go next year. And then it was abundantly clear that they weren't, especially Giroux. And then finally, I believe, if I remember correctly, I think it was in March of that year, finally Giroux opened up and basically was like, yeah, I haven't felt myself all year. I'm finally starting to feel like 100%.
No, I don't even think we had started Broad Street Hockey Pod at that time. I'm still with whatever it was, Buzz on Broad or the Orange Update, and I'm like, Giroux's cooked. We need to move on from this guy.
No, I think it was year one.
Was it year one of? Maybe that's when that's the first full year he comes around and then starts to feel good at the end.
Yeah, because he had the surgery in 2016.
Yeah, okay.
Our first year with BSH was 2016-17.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was that year. But I remember you being like, "Oh God, Giroux's cooked.
This is horrible."
Because he looked bad that year.
He looked real bad.
But I definitely get the sense that surgery was significantly more complex than the one that Drysdale had. Also, and this is important, surgeries have just gotten better over the last 8 years.
This was a decade ago.
Yeah, it's been 8 years.
Yeah.
It's just they found ways to do these surgeries better and not have the recovery time be as long. But I also think this also wasn't as major of a surgery as the ones that Drew especially, but also Gostisbehere got back
That's
then.
absolutely encouraging. All right. Is there any more of these rumors from your article you want to get into, or are we good to hit the other rumors?
Yeah, the only other one I'll just kind of tie the bow on the Alexei Kolosov stuff. I was on vacation when that whole thing broke, so I obviously wasn't on the
We
ground.
had a good panic show.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a panic show. I do not doubt that. I'm sure there was a lot of panic on Flyer Social as well.
I'm easily influenced by other people's panic.
I mean, fair. I can tell. But I never really dove into that because it happened when I was on vacation. So I was able to get some details on it. It does seem like there was something. It wasn't just that like whoever that writer at Belarus Hockey is just made something up. It does seem like Kolosov maybe found the transition to North America harder than I think even he thought it was going to be. That he struggled a bit when he came over for that, for that little audition. Got those 2 games with the Phantoms.
2 games, yeah.
And then stayed with the team through their relatively short playoff run, whatever. I think that was real. That there was a little homesickness, a little struggling to adapt to North America. But I don't think there was ever serious consideration of trying to get out of the contract and not coming back over, refusing to report, things like that. He is on an ELC. He's on an NHL contract for 2 more years. I think the Flyers and Kolosov have talked about this. They are very much working to try to make sure that what happened in April, where he struggled a bit, doesn't happen when he comes back. And I think it's a good sign that it seems like the Flyers are on top of this one, and they are trying to ease the transition as much as possible because they really value him as a prospect. He's a big part of their goalie future.
Just based on what you've been able to dig up, it was more about homesickness than possibly,
yes,
hey, he came over, he got into 2 games, and then in the playoffs, they rode Cal Peterson and he didn't play.
Yeah, I think it was mostly about the cultural shock of coming over. I don't think he was ever promised that he was going to be the horse for the Phantoms going into the playoffs. This was like, hey, let's let you get your feet wet. You can meet with our people, talk with Brady Robinson, Kim Dillaball, get in that whole thing. And it maybe just didn't go as smoothly as he even thought, not because of anything the Flyers did wrong, but just because it's real hard moving to another country when you're like 22.
All right, there is.
We all silly like the mayor.